Welcome back, everybody, to The Practical Woodsman. I'm Rut, the creator and host of The Practical Woodsman. That's right, it's my genius which has brought this all into existence. Do you like coffee? If so, how do you like to take your coffee? Do you take it black, with sugar, cream? Well, I thought that what we could talk about in this exclusive video for The Practical Woodsman is all the different ways, all the different options you have when you're out in the backcountry, back in the woods, for preparing coffee. And we're going to go through a bunch of different ways here to do that. And I'm going to tell you what my favorite ways are that I think lend itself the best to being on foot, traveling through the woods for many miles, many days, many nights at a time, and which ones aren't so practical for that. This is going to be good for everybody so that you can, come to your own conclusions about what way is going to work best for you on your adventures. We got to do the musical introduction first, so don't go anywhere. I'll be right here when it ends. To get us started, how about if we get our stove put together? That's right, we're going to use a stove for this. Now, obviously, if you're out in the backcountry, you're out in the woods, you could use a campfire for this. In fact, that would be my preference, would just be to get a little tiny fire going, and it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Just enough to heat up a little pot of water and turn it into coffee, and then be able to put the fire out. So, this would not be like a ginormous bonfire or anything. It'd just be a nice little compact fire. But for our purposes here today, I'm just going to use a canister stove to heat up our water. And I hope, as we do this, I don't leave anything out, because I haven't really scripted this. I just thought we would go through them one by one, make a cup of coffee in each different type of way. And all this talk of coffee actually has me wanting a cup of coffee, so I'll be drinking that while we're sitting here talking. And kind of going over the pros and cons of these different preparation methods for coffee. You've heard me say in the past that for some reason, when I get out into the backcountry, my preferences change. So if I'm just sitting here at home, sitting in my living room, I'm a coffee snob. I like to have the best cup of coffee that I can get. A lot of times that involves grinding my own beans and going through the most complicated process here at home. But out in the backcountry, that ain't necessarily the case. There's other considerations to have. For example, if you'll remember, the premise that I'm always working with is that you're on foot. Everything you have, you're carrying on your back. This is why I say that most of the bushcrafters out there are full of BS, because they're just stepping down. They're not in the woods. They're in trees. They step in, 50 yards into a treed area where they do these things that they're showing off to you, and 90% of these things that they're showing you are not practical in a real scenario where you're on foot traveling through the wilderness, because the gear that they're using for that is complex, lots of different parts to it, it's heavy, and things of that nature. And the true nature of being in the backcountry is simplicity, but effectiveness. Most of the time. So that's the premise I'm working with. If you're traveling through the woods, you're not looking for the most complex preparation method for your coffee. We'll show some here. For example, the beans that I've got for this video are whole beans. They're not ground. I don't think I would ever do that in a real life scenario out in the woods or even in a bug out bag or a survival pack or something like that, because you're not going to want to have to go through any more steps than is absolutely necessary to get something made. Even if you're a backpacker, you're on a backpacking trip, you know how it is. In the mornings, you're getting up, you want things to be simple, right? You want breakfast preparation to be simple. You want to be able to pack up camp relatively easily and then just get going, because you've got a whole day ahead of you and mileage that you want to get in under your belt that day. So you're not going to want to spend a half hour, 40 minutes preparing your coffee that morning. You want simplicity so that you have time to get all the other chores done, get packed up, get set out on foot. But for this video, I am using whole beans. I just thought it would make it is an option, right? It is an option for you to carry whole beans out in the woods. Now, if you're carrying whole beans out in the woods, what else are you going to have to carry? Going to have to carry a hand grinder or a battery-powered grinder. But you see that already, because just our choice of bean, that things are getting more and more complex, aren't they? This is not just dump some powder into a cup and drink it. Because we've chosen whole beans, think about what that means. It means you have to carry gear that you otherwise wouldn't carry. So just by your choice of whether to carry pre-ground coffee or whole coffee beans, suddenly the complexity of your pack is increasing there. So something that is not a problem at all at home, and is actually therapeutic. It's therapeutic to grind your own beans. And the smell that comes off of freshly ground roasted beans, my goodness, can't be beat. And you might think to yourself, boy, I'd sure like to have that experience out in the backcountry. Well, this isn't light, this grinder here. And as we go through the processes of these things today, you're going to see what's simplest and what's not so simple. But anyway, in the backcountry, I would always carry pre-ground coffee. I would never carry the whole beans. Not usually. All right, so we've got our stove put together here. Let's see, what I want to show you is first. Well, I'll tell you what, let's go from simplest to most complex. Let's do it that way. And with that in mind, I carry this package here, and in this packet, I keep teas and coffees, just dry powdered stuff, right? Dry stuff. Now, I also keep in this little packet here water flavoring with electrolytes. So this is like the Gatorade version. Now, why do I carry these in powder? You can get this water flavoring in a liquid form. Well, I sort of talked about it, and it was either the last episode of the Practical Woodsman podcast or an exclusive video or something, but the heaviest thing by volume that you're going to carry in your pack is anything that's in liquid form. So you say, well, if you got a little pod of water flavoring, that's not a whole lot of weight, even though it's in liquid form. Well, that's true. But if you've got several things that are in liquid form, the weight of that accumulates and adds up real quick. So I always try to find things in their powdered form if I can. And that's why I've got these water flavors in there. I've got some packets of teas. You see, this is my beverage, my little beverage pack, and I keep that in an outside pocket that I can get to easily. So if I'm backpacking or hiking down a trail and I want to get myself a cup of coffee or something like that, or flavor some water, I can pull it right out of the back pocket and do that. So to get us started, I have here some instant coffee by Starbucks. This is called Via, and it's actually not instant coffee like most brands make. This is actually super micro ground. And so the coffee just dissolves in the water. This is just regular coffee that's just been really finely ground for it to dissolve in hot water. So let's get some hot water made, and then we'll come back to this coffee, try it out. You'll see how easy it is, and then we'll try some other forms of making coffee. Test, test, test. All right. All right, we've got some hot water here. Now, if you were out in the woods, would there be any need for you to filter that water that you're going to make coffee out of? The answer to that question is, of course not. Of course not. I've seen people do it. Filter their water. Go to the trouble to filter their water when it appears perfectly clean, but still go through the trouble to filter their water so they can boil it and make coffee out of it. What sense does that make? You're boiling the water. There's no reason to filter the water. It's probably clean already anyway. So as you can see, I've got my instant coffee here. Simply rip that open, pour that in. Got my hot coffee, or got my hot water there. Going to pour that in there. See, got the clear camera there. Pour that in, and you're done. Now, folks, it don't get much more easy than that. If you imagine, as we're going through these, imagine you're in camp in the morning. You had a good evening, went to bed, had a good sleep, but now you've got 10 miles ahead of you today. You don't want to be dicking around the campsite all morning. You got other things to do, but you do want to get your coffee into you. Well, that's just about as easy as it gets. You think about it, if you got the fire restarted that morning, this would just be a trip down to the creek, fill up your kettle or your mug, and just stick that right in the fire. You don't even have to hang it or anything like that. Get a boil going, and that's all there is to it. Got your coffee all set. Now let me tell you how this tastes. The reason I asked you at the beginning, how do you like your coffee? I should have asked, do you like it real dark? Do you like Folgers coffee? I mean, how do you like your coffee? I particularly like a nice, rich, intense coffee flavor, like Starbucks has made itself famous for. And that's what you get with this. This is the Italian roast. And Starbucks instant coffee, by the way, isn't called instant coffee. It's called VIA, V-I-A. And it ain't too bad. It's very, very simple. It gives you the jolt that you're hoping for. And I'll tell you what, one thing I like to do out in the woods is I like to take like a cocoa mix and just pour that in there too. Once I get my coffee made, pour some cocoa mix in there, and then you get kind of like a cafe mocha, or what do they call it? Mocha coffee or something like that. Those Italian names are a little bit too fancy-pantsy for me. So there you go. That's probably the simplest cup of coffee you're going to get. Now I'm going to pour this out. I'm not going to waste it, but I've got another cup here, and I'm just going to pour it into this other cup so that we can go ahead and demonstrate some of the other coffee making options that you got when you're out in the woods. So that's the simplest right there. We said we were going to start with the simplest and kind of work toward the most complex, right? Don't get any more easy than that. We've still got hot water, so we don't have to go boiling any new hot water just right yet. I wanted to show you probably the second easiest way to make a good cup of coffee is to get yourself one of these silicone coffee pour over funnels. And these things they're gonna last forever. They're very simple. They collapse on themselves. Now, the drawback to these, like I said, the more complex you get, the more stuff you have to carry, right? The more complicated the whole process gets. And I'm not convinced you really get that much better of a cup of coffee. And I'm not convinced that anybody really notices out there. Like I say, something happens to your taste buds out in the backcountry. I don't know if it's being around the smoke of the campfire or if it's being out in natural air for such long periods of time. Something happens to my taste buds. I don't know if there are other people out there who have experienced this. It's something about breathing the natural air or being around the campfire. For example, a meal that would normally taste fantastic to me back home, I like to season quite a bit when I'm out in the woods. I like those flavors to really pop. Whereas, at home, back in civilization, I don't really spend much time worrying about that sort of thing. But out in the woods, I really like for flavor to pop. Same thing with like sweets. I don't really get in the mood much for sweets when I'm in civilization. But when I'm in the backcountry, I like to carry some sugar with me and add a little bit of sugar to things and salt things a little extra heavy. And it's just, like I say, something about being out there in the natural world, breathing natural air, not having the smells and stuff of civilization around you that makes me crave things in a different way when I'm out there. Before we get off this instant coffee here, let me just point out real quick, let's talk about cleanup. Imagine you're out around the camp. What kind of cleanup you got when this is your coffee making method? It's just powder in the cup, hot water on top of that. What's cleanup? You drink your coffee, toss this in the fire, you're done. Or because this is kind of like aluminum impregnated, you just toss that in your trash bag and carry it out. But you're done. That's your whole cleanup right there. And I'll tell you what you can do with these instant packets here. You don't even have to use a spoon to stir that all up into your hot coffee. You can just use the packaging of the that the instant coffee come in. Do you have to have this highfalutin Starbucks instant coffee? No, not really. Folgers, Maxwell House, any type of cheap instant coffee will do. It's just if you can afford the Via, I prefer the Via. If I can afford the Via, I prefer the Via. I'm not going to take out a new mortgage or anything just to have the Via coffee. I would be just as content in most cases with just typical, bottom shelf instant coffee. So that's something to keep in mind. The cleanup is nothing. There's no cleanup. You can take this down to the creek, take your cup down to the creek, rinse it out, and you're done. So we started talking about this silicone coffee pour over cone, right, or a funnel. These require you to not only carry the silicone funnel, but you also have to start carrying filters if this is going to be your coffee making method. Again, it's not complex. It's just more complex than the other method, right? And so it's going to require a little bit more time, a little bit more cleanup, a little bit more everything. While our water's still hot, let's go ahead and do this. Oh, one other thing we got to do. We got to grind some coffee here. I forgot. I have my whole beans. So we take our grinder, throw some beans in there. Whew, boy, I'll tell you, that's one plus of grinding your own beans is this. The smell is amazing. Whew, man, that smells really good. But you know, that is not light. That feels like it weighs a pound or so. You know, I don't want to carry anything like that in my pack. Not when I'm hiking 50 miles. Okay, so cup, silicone holder, filter in the silicone holder. Just going to pour hot water over top of that, and we'll have our coffee. Okay, while that's filtering through, let's talk about cleanup for something like this. It's a little bit more involved, but not too much. I'll tell you why. The filter is just paper, so you can pull that out of there once you're done with it. Toss that right in the fire, and then you're done with it. You don't even have to carry it or anything like that. There shouldn't be any grounds in the silicone, so you can just collapse the silicone, throw that in your backpack. Again, you're ready to go. You drink your coffee, you rinse it out in the creek just real quick, and you're ready to go. Okay, I think method number 2 is done. So what do you think about that? That's pretty simple, isn't it? I had one of these silicone funnels for making coffee years ago, and I ended up misplacing it. And I liked it so much, I went out and found myself a couple more, and I just kind of keep them lying around so that if that's the method I want to use, I can use it. It is very simple, but it makes a really nice cup of coffee. Okay, I went ahead and tossed that filter. Here's the silicone funnel, whatever you want to call it. You can see it's dripping a lot. So it's a little bit messier than the other method, but it collapses. It's not too messy, but it does have like the condensation and the coffee hanging off the bottom of it and everything. It's gotten my hands wet. So it's a little more complex. Not a whole lot though. I really like that method. It makes a good cup of coffee. It's simple. You don't end up carrying a bunch of extra equipment, heavy equipment. This silicone funnel here don't weigh nothing. And it packs down really nice and compact. Yeah, good cup of coffee. Really good cup of coffee. The drawback is having to carry the filters. See, do you think in an emergency situation, let's say that you've got a bug out bag put together. Do you imagine in a real emergency situation, end of the world type thing, you're going to want to go running around looking for the filters that fit this or trying to come up with filters? I think solutions that don't require like specialized filters and things like that are really the way to go. Instant, I think, is a really nice way to go for not just long journeys in the backcountry, but also for putting together a bug out bag. Because you're not going to want to be reliant on special things like these filters that I happen to have here. You know, I can take 50 of them with me out in the woods, but they're finite. They run out eventually. And if you don't have them, what are you going to do? You're going to sneak into civilization and try to break into a locked down Walmart just to get some coffee filters? No, I think solutions that don't rely on things like that are probably better. You know, and I just got done telling you, I really like that way of making coffee. But that is a consideration. Though I think the Achilles heel in that setup is the reliance on those filters, period. All right, so I've poured that into my mug. That's preparation method number 2. We've got 2 out of the way. What's the third one we should talk about? All right, the third one I think is just as simple. It's actually probably a better solution than the one we just considered. It's probably simpler than the one we just considered. So this would probably come in second to the instant coffee. And this is what I call a sock, just a coffee sock. Have you ever seen one of these? It's a filter hanging off at the end of a metal ring, and it feels kind of like sock material. Now, it's not an actual sock. That's just what I call it. But you can get these off Amazon for next to nothing. They're made out of cloth, and you just put your coffee grounds in there, and again, it's just a pour over. So the nice thing is you're pouring over like this. Coffee's going in. When you're done, you simply shake out the old coffee grounds, rinse that off, and another beautiful aspect of this method of making coffee is that doesn't weigh anything, and it doesn't take up any space whatsoever. I mean, you don't even know that's there. Also, you don't throw it away when you're done. You can just keep using it to infinity. All you got to do is really just rinse the thing off and you're done. So let's make coffee with this method. I'll show you how easy that is. This might be I think it's the simplest way of making a good cup of coffee, aside from the instant coffee that we started this video off with. So let's go ahead and do this. I need to grind some more coffee, I think. Now remember what I said about this grinder. If I have my druthers, I never take whole bean into the woods. It's a wonderful experience. Man, it smells great when you're grinding the coffee. I think it even makes the coffee taste better when it's fresh ground like that. But it requires carrying things that you wouldn't otherwise have to carry. It complicates things. So, given my druthers, I always carry pre-ground coffee. I never carry the whole bean. All right, so here we got the sock. Here we've got the ground coffee. Just pour that in there. See how that is? And then we just pour it over top of our coffee, all over top of our cup. I hope this is showing up on the camera there. Tell you what, let's pull that down a little bit. All right. Looks like it's peeing, doesn't it? Peeing into my cup. So there you go. That's it. Let's try it. Makes an excellent cup of coffee. As you can see, it's just so easy. It's a little messy, but if you're out in the woods, you're not going to be worried about the dripping, because it's going to be dripping right on the ground. And then you just clean out those grounds right there. You just toss them out. Rinse your sock off. and you're ready to keep going. Let me clean this up. I'll be right back. Like I say, sitting right here at my desk doing this, it seems a lot messier than it actually is. If you're out in the woods, this sock method would not be troublesome at all because you're not worried about dripping on anything. You know, you're working out over the ground and stuff like that. So that dries very fast. You can just hang out off of a tree. Let me give you a good look at that. You see, it's not complex at all. So I would say that this is probably the second easiest way to make coffee out in the backcountry, following up the instant coffee method. And the great thing about this, like we just got done talking about those paper filters, you don't have to rely on a pack of disposable filters, paper filters. You can't really use a paper filter that many times before it breaks through. Something like this just lasts forever. I mean, if you're out in the woods, society has collapsed or something like that, something like this might last you a whole year before you have to figure out how to replace that cloth. But it's so effective, you don't have to keep coming up with disposable filters to replace what you used the day before. You can just carry this along with you and use it for a long, long time. I've had this here for years. Now, I don't use it every single day, and if I did, it probably wouldn't have lasted many years, but it certainly would last months at a time. So there you go, the sock method. So what have we covered so far? We've covered instant coffee. We've covered the sock method. We're going to call that number 2. Number 3 is the silicone coffee funnel with paper filters. So that's number 3. Let's take a look at our next preparation method. First, let me get a sippy poo of this coffee here that I just brewed. Yeah, it tastes like one of my dirty socks. I'm kidding. It tastes fantastic. So that we can keep using this cup, let's pour that in here. All right, next method is you can get a hold of titanium filters. So this is another method that is simple, doesn't require much cleanup. The whole thing's made out of titanium. The whole setup's made out of titanium. So again, this is not like something where you've got filters that you got to throw away and you got to replace. This is something that could potentially last for years. It's got a very fine mesh here at the bottom. And then it's got a little plate that comes with it. Now, that's kind of a drawback, that it involves multiple parts. So I'm not keen on things that involve multiple parts, typically. If I can avoid that, I like to avoid it. But you can put this right here on the cup, like that. That'll fit on any cup, by the way. You see this cup here? It's what I've been pouring my coffee into. Technically, that's too small for that opening, but it does work. And then you just put your coffee grounds in there, pour over, got coffee. The benefit of that is it lasts forever and ever, and you're not dependent on disposable paper filters. So I do like that. I do like the quality of that, the way that that's built, the fact that it's reusable over and over and over again. One drawback I could think potentially of a setup like this is if you see that very fine mesh there that makes the filter. If you were to poke that with a stick or something like that and put a hole in it, well, then the thing would kind of be worthless. It'd be almost impossible to repair something like that out in the backcountry or on the move with, if you're using this in a bug out bag. But, as long as you protect it, it could last a long, long time. So let's go ahead and do our coffee this way. Drop that camera. For this kind of a setup, you want to use a little heavier grind on your coffee than you probably typically would, just to keep the grounds from pouring through. Starting to fill that cup up. Going to need a new cup here in a minute. Going to have a lot of coffee here to drink tonight. That's all right. I'm an Appalachian boy. Grew up in Appalachia. And in my family, my mother, my grandparents, my uncles and aunts and cousins, always a pot of coffee on. I remember going to my grandpa's, and he'd be putting on a fresh pot of coffee at 10 o'clock at night. And my mom's the same way, I'm the same way, and people say, man, doesn't that mess up your sleep and everything? It honestly does not. I can have a cup of coffee 11 o'clock at night and then lay down at 11:30, go right to sleep. I think it's just part of the culture. I think it's just, I think that's what it is, just generations of us loving and drinking coffee that way, that it's kind of lost its its effect on us. It's a nice way to relax in the evening. Well, I think about folks in the cities. I lived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for a long time after I growed up, moved to the big city. And there's a culture of that there too. People hang out at the cafes, the Starbucks, till late at night studying, socializing and stuff like that. And late at night, I think the Starbucks I used to hang out at the bookstore in Philadelphia, they wouldn't close down until 11 o'clock, 11:30. Let's try that out. Yeah, so there you go. That's another really nice setup there for coffee. Simple, effective, trustworthy setup for your coffee. What I mean by trustworthy, well, it goes back to if I'm at a, collapse of society type of situation or something like that. The same methods and techniques and stuff that I use out in the backcountry just for pleasure, for like being out in the backcountry, traveling through the backcountry, is the same types of principles and stuff that I try to apply to a bug out bag. I want it to be dependable. I want it to be simple. I want it to be practical. I want it to be trustworthy, meaning that I can rely on it. I don't have to worry about something running out where then I have to run back into civilization or back into the lion's den to get something that I forgot, or that something that I have won't work without, So this titanium setup here is pretty great for something that just works again and again and again, and you don't need to rely on other things for it to work. That's what will be number 5. Stick around. Let's do it. I'm sort of saving the most interesting one for last, but for now, I'm going to show you one that I don't really recommend. They sell now French presses, backpacking French presses. So these would be like French presses that are made specifically for woodsmen, backpackers, and I'll tell you why I don't recommend it. It's really only got one purpose, so it's not like an item of gear that you're going to carry in your pack, and it's going to do multiple things for you. You're not going to use it as a bowl or a cup or a kettle or anything like that. It just kind of, pretty much, it's French press. That's what it does. That's what you're carrying it for. That's all you're going to use it for. And so that for that reason, I don't like it. It doesn't serve multiple purposes. It's just extra gear, extra weight, taking up space and weight in your pack, complicated in a way that is unnecessary. All right, we've got this is a French press. This is not like a Woodsman's French press or anything. This is just a standard cheap French press. I don't even particularly like my coffee made in a French press. I do it when I'm feeling unusually lazy, maybe sometimes. I prefer French presses for things like tea, but not so much for my coffee. But for those of you who aren't familiar with French presses, they seem very simple. You just dump your coffee grounds in there, and then you've got a plunger here. I'm sure most of you have seen these. You pour your hot coffee in or your hot water in, pardon, like this. And then you put your plunger in. This plunger keeps all the coffee grounds from coming up into the upper chamber. So as you plunge it, you're pushing water through it, mixing those coffee grounds up with that hot water, but filtering the coffee grounds out from the upper chamber so that those don't come out when you pour. So, like I say, they're making these now for Woodsman. They seem to be well made and everything. It's just, that's all they do, and that's all they're for. And so it's extra weight, extra equipment that does nothing else for you. And when you've got all these, which I think are superior ways of brewing coffee out in the woods, French press seems pretentious, unnecessary, sort of ignorant to me. But you see guys who claim to profess to be woodsmen out there using French presses in the woods from time to time. And like I say, I don't think it makes as good a coffee as the other ways we've demonstrated here today. And it's more complex. There's more cleanup. Let's talk about cleanup after this. You got to clean out this whole thing. It's extra stuff you're carrying. Get those coffee grounds out of there. You wipe that down and everything like that. And so it's just a mess. I don't really recommend them. But maybe you do. And so in the comments, I'd love to hear what you think about the French press. It tastes watery to me. Watery and not very flavorful. I like greater flavor in my coffee. All right, the last method for preparing coffee in the woods that I'd like to show off to you today, and maybe I'm forgetting some. So maybe there's something that you guys would like, you think that I've missed, you'd like me to show in the future, or you'd like to tell us about. Do that in the comments. Or better yet, join us over there on our locals group by going to thepracticalwoodsman.locals, LOCALS.com, or by downloading the locals.com app from the App Store and then just searching for The Practical Woodsman within. And you can share your own videos there. You can talk to your heart's delight. You can share your own pictures, whatever you'd like to do. But so either there or in the comments here, let me know what you think about this episode. If I'm missing some type of really important coffee preparation method. The last one we're going to talk about here today, which I think is probably the most interesting, is how to make cowboy coffee. The interesting thing about cowboy coffee is you don't need anything. You just need your pot or your mug, hot water, and coffee. And you can make cowboy coffee. Now, how does it work before we start into this? The way it works, let me get my pot that we're going to use to make this cowboy coffee. The way this works is you take a pot and you put hot water in it. And you start getting that hot water boiling. As that hot water gets reaching a boil, you throw your coffee in there. You throw the coffee grounds right in there. There's no filtering. And then, as that water's boiling with those coffee grounds and it's turning the water into coffee, you think to yourself, right? Well, if I'm going to pour myself some of that and drink that, well, I'm just going to get a mouthful of coffee grounds. Well, there's a thing we do to make cowboy coffee right toward the end that prevents that from happening. And what you do is you take cold water and you pour it around the lip here of the pot, and that cold water coming into contact with the hot water that the grounds are all in forces the coffee grounds down to the bottom of the pot. So therefore, when you pour yourself a cup of coffee, all the grounds stay at the bottom and you just get coffee. We're going to do that, but I'll tell you the reason why I've saved that for another reason why I've saved it for last. It's wonderful in that you don't need anything else. You don't need any special anything. You don't need filters. You don't need something special to pour the hot water through or to strain the coffee through. You can do it almost in any situation. It's great for a bug out bag situation. It's great for surviving in the backcountry, because it requires nothing. It's just coffee in a pot and water. But it's more involved. There's more to it than these other methods that we've looked at. Cleanup is kind of a hassle because you're left over with all these tons of coffee grounds. You got to clean out your pot and all that. It's not as quick and as painless as some of these other methods we've looked at. If you imagine like getting ready for a camp situation. So we're going to do it here. You'll see that it's a little bit more involved than the other things that we've done. But then you'll know how to do it, and you'll know that it's an option for you out in the woods. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so now's when we want to put our coffee in there. And I'll show you how we do that. Turn that down a little bit. Coffee just goes straight in. We'll mix that up a little bit. So you can see the coffee grounds are all in there real nice and thick. And you definitely don't want to end up drinking that, do you? So we just let that cook for a little bit. We're going to turn this down. We just want to kind of have a little tiny rolling boil there. That about like that is just great. Get those mixed in there. I'll tell you what, this is probably the way of making coffee that smells the best. I'll tell you, it's filled this whole room here with the smell of cooking coffee, and it's delightful. But we just want that to cook like that. You can see all the coffee grounds there. Now what we're going to do as that comes back to a boil is we're going to pour in some cold water. Make those coffee grounds all sink to the bottom. So a little bit more involved than all the other methods that we showed. You just want to pour right around the edge here. Just right around the edge, like that. Get those coffee grounds off the side there of the wall of that. Just like that. Pour just a little bit more in there, like that. All right, now I want to show you what happens. You don't want to go shaking that all up or anything. You just want to tilt that over the side there, like this. You see that? Only thing coming out of there is coffee, not coffee grounds, just coffee liquid. All right, so let's drink this and finish up this video here and summarize everything, and then we'll call it gold. Here we are. The last cup of coffee. This is the Cowboy Coffee. You saw me pour that in there. No coffee grounds coming out in that, just coffee. You can see the smoke, not smoke, but the steam still rising off the top of that. It's still pretty hot. That's why I really like to drink coffee out of a kuksa, by the way, because the heat of the liquid doesn't transfer through the medium of my cup, through the wood, and burn me or burn my lips or anything like that. And so it's a really nice drinking experience. Let's try her out. Yep, it's just coffee. No coffee grounds in there. But as you can see, that was a little bit more involved. It takes a little bit more time. It's not just so, get her done. You kind of, that Cowboy Coffee kind of requires a little bit of patience, and it's probably best if you're at a base camp or something like that, or you're sitting there, you're going to be there all morning or all afternoon. There's no hurry. That's the best time to make Cowboy Coffee, and frankly, it probably makes the best cup of coffee of them all. It's just and it requires nothing else. You don't have to have any extra special filters or anything like that. Just coffee in a pot. Works out real nice. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is this episode, or this exclusive video of the Practical Woodsman. I hope that I've given you some ideas, or shown you more or less all of the options that you have. Not necessarily did I show you every single option that exists, but I think I covered every single type of category of coffee making that exists, or the primary ones anyway. And hopefully it'll help you come up with an idea for how you want to pack your bug out bag, or how you want to prepare for going out into an excursion into the woods for multiple days and nights, and end up with a really nice cup of coffee reliably, right? And in a practical way, a practical method of making coffee that's reliable. So I appreciate the time I've got to spend with you. I hope you've enjoyed the time that you've got to spend with me. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, dadgum, a cup of coffee sounds good right about now, don't it? Well, go get yourselves a cup of coffee and enjoy. I'll talk to you real soon.